Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell. WellPoint is the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And we thank our friends at WellPoint for helping to make this podcast, all of our Inside Lowell podcasts, possible, along with the rest of our podcast sponsors. Of course, our friends at the Washington Savings Bank. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Boston North Company, business solutions for restaurant and retail. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection since 1925. Francis E. Preventure Insurance Agency, Agent Greater Lowell is counted on for more than 41 years. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement, and hopefully with one more win, a championship to the Mill City. And with that, let me bring in my special guest for this podcast. He is now a former employee of the city of Lowell, having retired officially as of last week, August 2nd. But man, did he go out with a bang, making some news and a whole bunch of enemies. Former City of Lowell Elections Director, Greg Pappas. Greg, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, Ted. I mean, if I go out telling the truth and it becomes enemies, and I'm fine with that. Every elected official I ever worked for 47 years, I told the truth. And I know people pick me up after that. That's why I worked for all these different elected officials.
What's that old saying? The truth is hate speech to those who don't
know what to say. I mean, I tried to, emphasize this in the first city election that I needed to have this stuff done as soon as I got there. We needed to have all this stuff straightened out, and didn't get straightened out for 2 years.
All right.
So,
let's delve into that, because I do think there are some legitimate questions, A, about why a special election to replace John Leahy in District 3 couldn't be done, and B, whether it still can be done, even though now they don't have a choice now. There's no appointment allowed anymore. They have to have a special election, and they have to do it within a certain timeline.
Right.
And I have some question based on some things that you've said about whether that can happen.
Yeah.
But first, you very rarely speak at city council meetings, but you were called forward.
Yeah, only when asked.
That night, you were asked to come address holding a special election and the timelines required. And let's just say your responses touched off another round of controversy and are still getting criticized right up until this morning on the radio. I heard some shots taken at the elections department in the city of Lowell, and it's been going on since that night on July 23rd. Why couldn't a municipal election get done?
Well, first of all, to go back to the appointment thing, I wasn't aware that was a scenario, and neither was the city. I was surprised to find out when talking to Secretary Galvin's office, and as you know, I worked for Galvin and Noon for 40 years. Billy was aware that Somerville, Chelsea, Lowell, and Cambridge had the appointment ability way, way, way back, because crazy election stuff. He loves this stuff. He studies everything. Only those 4 cities way, way, way back. Even this friend of mine who's the president of the city council in Chelsea, who works in the election department of Boston, Calvin didn't even know. It's a very rare thing. So I wasn't aware that there was an appointment process.
Yes. So to be clear, you were the first official that I remember elected or appointed in the law department, elections division or whatever. When you came on board with the city, you said, hey, listen, gang, this plan and to appoint people or have the runner-up get in a district race, this is illegal. This is against state election law.
It doesn't work.
So you were the first to publicly call for,
from the beginning.
You got to have elections to replace these district councils.
Right. And I said that from the beginning. I didn't know about the point, but again, from the beginning, we did say that, but they also didn't do what we needed to do. And I told them, I said, you need to straighten out the signature situation. They were having people get 150 signatures. I can see that for citywide, but they had them getting 150 signatures if you ran in the district. And then they would allow you to not only get the 100, which it should only be 50, but they allow people from outside the district to sign them. That's not the intention of this form of government. People in Highlands should not, for instance, if there was a special election in Belvedere, people in the Highlands could stick somebody in the election and get them 150 signatures in the Highlands and count them towards Belvedere.
And to be clear, that happened in the run-up to the 2023 municipal election. People from Pawtucketville were signing John Leahy's nomination papers, and people from Belvedere were signing Paul Ratayen's, et cetera. So folks who say the people outside my district shouldn't have any say in my district, they're right.
That's correct.
Our election, nobody ever wanted to address that before.
No, and that needs to be done. And I said that from the beginning, because the reality is it just doesn't make it makes no sense at all. And it's not what the intention of that form of government, whether it's done by a federal magistrate, not a federal judge, he's a magistrate, or by state law. The intention is for those people to have a district council, and only they pick them and vote for them. So if you're going to only be able to vote for them, you should only be able to nominate them. And I asked if it kind of just went by the wayside. Because I was so concerned about it, because I haven't been in the court with the secretary many times and seen what judges do, I told every candidate that came in the office, including incumbents and non-incumbents, you make sure 50 of the 150 from within the district, because if some smart kid comes along and says, I got all my 150 in the district, this person got them all outside, I want him thrown off the ballot because he didn't follow what the state law really requires with district representation. And that person could have probably tossed somebody off. It's not what should happen, and it's still happening. So as far as the special election goes, when we knew this was coming, I had suggested to them that if they're going to do one in a presidential year, now you're at a point with the mail-in voting, where the United States Post Office is overwhelmed. They've been overwhelmed for years. They never added people when they did this. When we originally started mail-in voting, which was just pre-COVID, which was for COVID, it's supposed to go away after COVID, you had some people who were talking to me and saying, well, are we handling it? Yeah, you had 20% of the ballots coming in. Now we're getting 60% of the turnout coming in. We have to process those. 7 steps to process them. 5 people, 5 machines, licensed by the state. 350 people at the polling locations, 1 step. That's not a good business model. They only have to do 1 step. We got to do it's just, and then you can't mix up the ones coming back and they need to be scanned back in with the ones going out. It's like we're already up over, when I left Friday, we were already up over 7,000 in the mail for the upcoming primary. That's a lot of ballots. And it's probably going to be 9,000 to 10,000. It's probably going to be 60% of the total primary turnout in-house. It's very, very difficult to do. So when we saw this thing coming, I said, if it's possible, we should try and fit it so we could put the special election, and I could set it up so that in the state primary, we would have at the Riley School and at the what's the other on Boylston Street, the other school on Boylston Street down there behind the other precinct. Yeah, my memories because of my anesthesia thing there. But there's 3 ballot boxes there, and one there we could put separate ballot boxes for. No, we don't even have to put. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it. We don't even have to put separate ballot boxes. What we could do is program those machines, the state machines, to accept the state ballot and the primary and the city ballot, and separate the election. That we would have been fine. We could have done the same day as the primary and the same day as the state election. All right. Well, but it was too late. They waited too long.
So let me backtrack. When did you say this? Was the first time you said this at the meeting on that night?
No, I was saying that in City Hall before that because it was too late. It had to be before July. Right. I didn't know when he was going to resign. I thought he was going to resign earlier than because it was back in the spring kind of like that he was talking about that I heard. Right. So I said if we can get it before July, it will fit into that framework. But then we'll give people time because you have to go. The statutory things are required. You go backwards from the election, so many days for the primary or preliminary. Then you have to go backwards so many days for nomination papers, so many days to get signatures, so many days to challenge the signatures, so many days for a ballot law hearing, so many days. You can't wipe those things out.
All right. So who were you saying this to? Because one of the things is you suddenly popped up out of the blue that Tuesday night.
Yeah.
July 23rd.
Well, that's the first time they called me.
And it was too late.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that I first became aware of the timeline and how challenging that might be to do it within 120 days. The previous Thursday, July 18.
Right.
Excuse me, I believe was the date. You were on radio with Jerry Nutter.
Yep.
And you first brought up, like, I think it's going to take 5 months. You're talking about January or February.
Yeah.
So you said this on the radio. It immediately piqued my interest, and we had a conversation about timelines. And that's when you kind of started talking, you got to do it without a preliminary or whatever. That's the only way to get it in 120 days.
In 120 days, but I didn't support that. I wanted to. I didn't like the idea of taking out a preliminary.
Right, which they did eventually.
I just don't like that, but that's.
But so you
the legislation can do that.
So you started sounding the alarm then.
Yeah.
But who did you talk to beforehand? Like who did you kind of start to bring these questions up to beforehand?
I've been doing it for 2 years. But you mean this particular one with Councilor Leahy?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm people coming in and out of the elections department is the mailroom. So it's constantly people coming in and out. And I get counselors all the time. They'll come in during the day to get something to eat from Ed's Cafe right there, the little thing, and they'll stop by and see us all the time. And I'm used to that because I explained that to the kids in the office, and they are kids to me, that even with Secretary Galvin's office, the legislators, if they were in the building, they'd always stop by to see us in elections because they wanted to keep a good rapport. I don't know. They just did that for years. So a lot of them knew me because I was in the State House for 40 years. Okay. I mean, the congressman knew me because I worked in Washington for a congressman,
Okay.
So
but in
that's
terms
common.
Of the council, the first time you were invited to speak about this with the council formally was on July 23rd. They started this process in what I believe was August of 2023. And then they waited until after the election. The new council was sworn in, to my understanding, and that's when they started having their subcommittee meetings, working out these details. Yeah. Were you called to the subcommittee?
I was doing the first one that Councilor Robinson was on. He was starting to do stuff, and then the election came, and they were. I don't even know who's on the second subcommittee. Actually, the one that came after that one. I'm not even still sure who's on it. I never got called to that. Councilor Robinson subcommittee.
Okay. I think,
and he actually came. He said that night, "Why don't we just wait and try to do it in the new year?" And I was surprised one of the councilors shot him down. And the one that really wanted, I'm going like, "Wow, okay, I'm not here to,
Because I believe Councilor Janess chairs that committee, and I know there are a couple of others on. One councilor did say to me, we made a mistake. We were talking to the law department. We should have brought Greg Pappas in earlier before we started drafting the legislation.
And Corey's doing a good job. They got a million things. Actually, to tell you what's going to happen, I think very shortly you're going to see the election is going to come out and go back under the clerk's office where it should be. The law department's got tons of things to do. They got millions. They just got a new team put in there, some younger kids and stuff like that, and young attorneys, and they got a million things to do rather than overlook elections. I mean, the clerk's office is natural. 90% of the Commonwealth, the elections department comes under the clerks. There's some where they stand free as their own election cycle, but there's not one that comes under the solicitor's office, and they did a great job. I mean, they helped us with a lot of the day-to-day stuff, the mailing, and not the mailing, any problems we had. It just makes more sense. So they had him dive into stuff while he's still trying to do all these lawsuits and all the tax liens and all the. I think the council. I think the law department did an excellent job, the best they could, considering that's not their. It should have never been put there in the first place. But you go back to the city manager who did it. You know why.
All right. So you were one of the probably the first official with the city to call for having elections. You knew it was coming up,
right? And
yet you told them it can't be done in less than 5 months. We could theoretically do it in 4 months, but we have to skip the preliminary election. Well,
because they couldn't fit it in. If you're going to squeeze that calendar, special legislation, you can do anything, but it doesn't bear out that's the best interest of the public. The best interest of the public is to have the regular process where you have the preliminary and then you have the whatchamacallit. The only way you could cut back on is less time for them to get signatures, and they start screaming on that, the candidates, if they don't get 5 weeks to get 150 signatures. That's why there should only be 50. But to eliminate a preliminary, I mean, the point is special legislation is okay, but it takes away from the original intent of what it is for people to get. You're going to eliminate a preliminary. If you really want an election and to get this person elected, why would you skip the preliminary? So you're going to have 49 people. I mean, Belvedere is very active. You could have 7 or 8 or 9 to 10 people running in the final, but you should only have 3, which is the intent of this whole new form of government. Eliminate the ones in the preliminary, and three appear in the final, and you pick one.
Okay.
But you're going to go back to the. A person could get elected with 150 votes.
So one of the criticisms that was said to me was, look, it's not Greg Pappas's job. He may be right on the timing and the ordinances and whatnot, the requirements, but it's not his job to make the policy. His job is to conduct the election.
That is correct. But I have to conduct the election and advise them when they're not going by the law.
What specifically in this home rule petition as it's written? Because I'm thinking, based on some of the things you've said, that 120 days is not going to happen unless you take shortcuts in the 5-week signature gathering, cut out the preliminary, the time between.
Well, now you will do it that way. The only thing is, the other thing was this whole thing was bad timing. If you, during a presidential election, when you're going to have 60 to 70% of the ballots coming in, to do all the work you need to do, well, let me put it this way. Last October, the manager was in the office. He says, what are these? I said, 17,000 nomination papers for people running, people with questions on the ballot. He goes, but that's for next November. He goes, yeah, we have to do them now. So we're doing next November stuff before the city election. We were doing the city election, certifying 17,000 signatures for the questions on the ballot the following year in November. We were also doing nomination papers for people running a state and ward committee for February. The schedules, So all that's coming in while you're still trying to do the city election. So now, if you went to the process of that special that they wanted to do, what happens is you're preparing for the mail-in. I mean, you're preparing for the state primary, and then you're going to try and turn around and have a city preliminary in between, and have another set of poll workers and another set of ballots and another set of bidding and another set of printing and another set of language things we have to send to Nebraska for the translations for, and another set of machines. It's confusing enough. And then you're going to have this presidential election, and then you're going to have another election in December near Christmas for another set. You have to change the chips back to which we call it Khmer and Spanish and all that. And then, it's a nightmare waiting to happen.
Okay, it's a nightmare, but it could get done. Can it or can't it?
If it got done, you could not be responsible for the integrity of the election, because there would be mistakes. I don't see how there wouldn't be. People make mistakes on the elections now, the regular elections. It's taking them 3 or 4 days. Why do you think Philadelphia and all of them are taking 3 or 4 days later? Because the ballots. I mean, look at us on the last state primary. What was it? 22, the state primary. We were there till 3:30 in the morning, from 4:30 in the morning the day before. Lowell got it out. We processed everything, got it out that night. Drake, Tingsboro, and the surrounding communities didn't. They don't have a quarter of the ballots we do, but they couldn't do them that night. They couldn't even finish that night.
Okay. A point that Councilor 𝒍𝒑𝒏𝒕 made on the council floor that night, though, was, listen, we're going to have state primaries every September in even-numbered years, followed by a presidential or gubernatorial election on that even-numbered year.
The gubernatorials aren't that big.
But his point is, if the way the ordinance is written here in Lowell, if somebody leaves that seat within the first year, there you are. That special election, it's either going to happen in June, July if they leave early enough, or it's going to have to happen in the fall, right in the midst of all of these elections.
Get it. But this, you're also talking about the biggest election probably in the history of the United States since Abraham Lincoln. There were, 38,000 people voted in the one 4 years ago. It could be like 60,000 in this one. It's going to be crazy. And I get you have to do that. But what they're going to have to do is do what I said before. COVID is over. Mail-in voting should be over too. End of story. Go back to that piece of cake. We go back to the regular normal election process. You can do both.
Why is it easier to process 30,000 ballots in 1 day of voting, as we used to do, versus the thing is here that mail-in ballots are arriving. My dad just got his out in the town of Drake. That gives the city 4 weeks to get this. And that should be easier for you. You don't have to process as many.
That's what I'm saying. You just send them to the polling location. You process them at the poll workers do. And then mail-in ballots are only absentee. The absentee ballots for Lowell, I'm going to guess, is probably around 700-800 a year. Not 4,000, not 7,000, 8,000, 9,000. I even had a lady, poor woman, came in the office to check to see last Tuesday, to check to see if she was getting a ballot in the mail. And I says, looks like you are. She goes, okay, because last year, she said, the presidential, I ended up going in the hospital. It wasn't the weekend before. She says, and my daughter was going to bring me it was like a week before, and my daughter was going to bring me the ballot and never arrived at the house. Well, ballots get lost in the mail. So the people we have the same thing with the nursing homes. We didn't get our ballots yet. The people who need the absentee ballots, who are shut in and sick and not well, are not getting them. The people that don't need them are getting them, or they don't need to get them. Some of them aren't getting them either. There would be another, I'm going to tell you, there'll probably be another 1,500 ballots going out in the mail, but people filled out the thing wrong. I told them. I got that many, probably 1,500 that I had. They didn't pick a primary ballot, so they're not getting the ballot in the mail. If they got one, God, we'd be up to like 17,000 right now.
All right, I want to get to that because I think the whole mail-in voting thing is problematic, and I want to throw some numbers out that people need to think about. But I want to wrap this special election out and the controversy surrounding you, because look, it's been said that your department was either incompetent, you and your department are incompetent, understaffed, or that you simply didn't want to do it.
No,
are any of those true?
No. Here's the bottom line. Be honest with you. I've watched the Lowell, because I'm from this area. I watched the Lowell election department for years. We watched it from the Secretary of State's office. We know people have been running the Lowell election department right for like 15 years. I'm the first one to come in who's an election official. Will Rosenberg, who's coming in now, is basically the assistant director of the state elections. He came in with my background, even better, and he lives in Lowell. Now you got to run it right, and people are complaining. No, that's the way it has to run. Matter of fact, when we inactivated people go, you can't do that. Well, they were supposed to by law, so that they can't be living in another community and voting here. They weren't doing that.
Right.
I don't know.
But if what you're saying is true, that you cannot conduct it in 120 days or less unless you shorten timelines, which may run you into problems, or eliminate mail-in voting. Let's be honest, mail-in voting isn't going away in Massachusetts. It is a state law. It's not going to happen. So to have a special election, because that is now the law of the land in Lowell. Next time a counselor leaves early in that situation, they have to have an election. How do you get it done in 120 days?
Well, it's not a matter of getting it done if it overlaps with another one. Getting it done is fine, but if it overlaps with others, there could be problems. You could get ballots mixed up.
So you're saying they have to do it on state primary day or on November general election day?
It'd be easier, but if you do it, if you continue to, if you're going to have mistakes, and if people are upset later on, the election can't be certified, like Hull's wasn't certified, they made them do it all over again because a fire truck blocked a location for 2 hours. And I told the clerk, you better move that fire truck, and she didn't. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. The thing, like I said, it can be done, but there's no guarantee. I would not be able to guarantee that it's going to come out right, because there's a possibility that, oh my God, did we already put those in the system that we sent out, or did we not check them in when they came back and we sent them to the polling place without checking them in? That can happen easily when you got 10,000, 11,000, 14,000 ballots sitting in buckets all around the office. I can't even put them in the safe at night. It's not safe. The manager come down and goes, Tom, I can't put them in the safe. It would take us more time to take them in every night and bring them back out, and then we'd lose 2 hours of work. It's just, you have to leave them on the floor in buckets,
Is this something that is affecting the city of Lowell alone? It's affecting every community.
All over the place. The clerks still call me all the time. Sure. I had the clerk in Chicopee, Barbara, who I've known for years, a clerk down at Fall River in New Bedford. They're the same problems. They know it's going to blow up. And they got plenty of cases like Lawrence, where you saw the lady pulling ballots out of the mailboxes and voting all those absentees. Illegally voting other people's ballots and sending them in. And people didn't know where they got a ballot. And look at I said to the Globe, you're part of the New York Times. What about the thing 2 weeks ago in New York, where the city councilor, four people who work for him, have been arrested, used tons of mail-in ballots so that he won the nomination, beat a guy for the nomination, then went on to lose to the person in the final. What if that person who they beat illegally would have won? And they probably, I don't know how many hundreds and thousands of ballots that they got from mail-in, but they looked at their records, said they never vote. I mean, it's not a good thing. It's over. COVID's over. Go back to normal elections, and everything will be fine.
Are you running for office to try to make that happen?
I'm running for office. 47 years of elected official. I've always been, like to say, I've been more effective helping my communities and stuff about being an elected official.
So realistically, in order for Lowell to hold a special election in the fall, as would have been the case,
it's going to be difficult.
They're going to need to do it either on general election day or on state primary day.
It would be easier. But like I said, if they told me to do it, I would have done it. But the point is, I would have told them.
Well, you wouldn't have, because you were gone in 9 days.
Yeah, but I mean, I told them in April because of my operation that I told the manager 2.5, to 3 years, and I just did 2.5, a little over 2. But I did this back in April before John was even talking about this. I gave them the notice, so they have time to pick a new person. But I would have done it, but I would have told them, I just want you guys to know there's no guarantees that this is going to not have a problem and you're not going to end up in court or something's going to get challenged because there's too many possibilities for error.
All right. So, and some folks will say that's just an excuse. You're overblowing it because you didn't want to have an election.
Of course. I love doing this stuff.
So I want to talk about that for a quick second because I think there's something you said that night that people are trying to refute since then, and it's actually you were 100% accurate, as you usually are.
I try to be.
I will say,
tell the truth.
If folks remember back when the Dominic Lay situation was happening, I spoke to you, and you were one of the first people to tell me Dominic Lay is a candidate in Lowell and should be there because if you vote in the city, that's where you are. Tax things and homesteads and whatever mean nothing when it comes to election law. Election law's there. You told me exactly what his attorney Roland Millard told me.
You're swearing on the pains of penalty of perjury that's your residence, And the reality is you got people that live in Florida and come back and forth. The state law, like I said, this is stuff that, Will knows. People prior to me didn't know. So we are not incompetent. We know I want to get this stuff out of my head. State law says you're a resident for voting purposes in Massachusetts where you spend 50% of the year on your head on the pillow in that state. Did you know that law?
No. Well, until I talked to you.
Because I told you. Right. So, I mean, they don't even know that, right? So I said, that's how people live in Florida, and then they claim Lowell is still their voting place because they claim that they sleep in Lowell out of the 365 days a year, 50 plus 1 day here. So, but the average, they don't know that, and I'd have all these attorneys going, well, how do you know that? How do I know it? I was there with Galvin when they wrote this stuff. So me coming in and Will is going to be the first time, Will taking over is going to be the first time, and the manager's very supportive, the council is supportive, getting us staff, realizing that we're trying to fix something that was done wrong for many, many, many years, and Lowell could have many, many, many times been told over that 20-year period, do the whole thing over again. But nobody challenged the stuff. And I know times where we would look the other way down and go, oh boy, I can't believe they did that, but All
right. We're chatting with Greg Pappas, former elections director for the city of Lowell, who also spent nearly 4 decades working on Beacon Hill or for officials, and most of that time spent in the Secretary of State's elections office. So I think those who are questioning your competence, because there's a lot of election law experts on that night on the 23rd and in social media in the following days. I've said to any of them, if you'd like to come in and have a debate with Greg Pappas, because now you got nothing to do. You're retired. Would you be willing to come in here and debate election law?
I would have any time, but the bottom line had what experts. I hear them all the time, and I said, no, that's not true. Read Section 53. I did it to some of the people in the solicitor's office. They thought they knew because they're attorneys. It's got nothing to do with it. It's a CMR. What's a CMR? A Commonwealth of Mass Regulation. Just look at them. Galvin lists all the stuff on the website. You can go in and read them all. That's all they had to do. Is Billy has the whole thing there, election laws and the web and the CMRs, and they're all right there. I mean, it's tons and tons of more stuff in other cases that I'm aware of because I was there. I was there when the judge said you will count that person on that signature. You will not throw them off that as that's an American citizen, and that signature is going to count. I saw judges do it. I saw them in ballots. The box outside of the ballots, because I know the marks outside of the ballots. If somebody does it, you're doing a hand count, like I said when Laurie had a recount and what's his name, Dan Coe, they knew what they were doing. If you had a mark and Laurie's vote is color the ovals here, Dan's here, and the mark's over here, a judge would take a ruler and measure which one is closer to and give the vote to. Challenge that thing because the judge will count it because that citizen intended to vote, just like the Chads in Florida, the hanging Chads in Massachusetts, they voted. I mean, the Chad's hanging because they pushed it through. It didn't fall up. It's a vote. It should have been counted.
All right.
But anyway, I'm just saying,
So you still proclaim that you know your stuff, and I believe you, and I'm willingly I welcome anybody who thinks that they know election law and is willing to debate why Greg was wrong. I'm willing to host that debate, just like I did the ADU debate, just like I do council debates, and you're willing to sit in here and debate election law with anybody.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is I was not against a special special election. I just said it's going to be really impossible to do in a year that
You
we
can
could
say it's going to be a bitch to do it because we're on.
Well, yeah, but
we're on the
I'm just
internet. We're not on
because
radio.
I mean this election, like they said, is probably going to be bigger than Abraham Lincoln when he ran. This is going to be crazy, and they're already dealing with it. They're going to start. No, like I said, you're going to say. So whatever. But I mean, as far as that, yeah, technically I am retired, and I would like to move on from this stuff, but. I'm not saying they shouldn't have one. I'm just saying it was going to be terribly difficult, and I would have done it. Or if I was going to stay, I would have definitely done it. But I would also say, honestly, I can't guarantee it would come out properly.
Okay,
that's all.
Folks looked at that and they laughed. And there have been a couple of articles in the Lowell Sun that have tried to kind of refute that, to say your figures about how many mail-in ballots didn't get counted and got tossed. Are wrong.
Yeah.
They cite official statistics from the Secretary of State office. Now, I want to point out that the bomb you dropped actually involved the 2023 municipal election.
And they were talking about 12.
Well, let's put that aside.
Yeah.
The spokesperson at the Secretary of State's office was referring to the 2022 state election and the 2024 presidential primary that we held in March.
And she did show once that were rejected.
Okay.
So she said none were disqualified, none were disfranchised. Yeah, they were.
But she said the numbers were lower than what you cited.
Right.
Why are you right and they're wrong?
Right, because what they're not telling you is that like the city election in 2023 is on a Tuesday. We have to certify it by the following Monday, 7 days later. During that week, as ballots come in late, we reject them for coming in late. After 8 o'clock, they get rejected unless they're military overseas. But those are usually done by email. So we have to reject them, and we direct them, we scan them into the system. So it shows up in VRAS up till 5 o'clock on that Monday. Well, usually 12 o'clock because we have to have the stuff in the Galvin by 5 o'clock. It's going to show you.
So those are the statistics that the person for the Secretary of State's office, that's what she was citing, which was different than your numbers.
However, the ones that come in the mail the next day, the next week, the week after that. And like I said to Melanie at the Lowell Sun, I said, Mel, I just got one in yesterday from the presidential election in March. I said, is that person disenfranchised? It's not the mailman's fault. It's just the mail. It's overburdened. I also got it in with people's wedding invitations from Stoughton, a woman's birthday gift to a granddaughter from Marlboro. I mean, the mail that's jammed in with our mail is crazy. We're not the only ones. It happens everywhere. So what I'm saying is, all the ones that come after that date, they don't see. I had 300 something in a bucket that were disenfranchised because the mail couldn't deliver on time. And again, it's not the mail's fault. The mail people are doing the best they can. They went at it. Yeah.
That's been cited out. That's just an excuse. He's wrong. And yet,
I showed it to a couple of counselors. Here's the bucket. Look, here you go.
This Lowell Sun. Yeah. This Lowell Sun article that I printed out. Yeah. Was updated on July 23rd, 2024 at 8:22 p.m. So shortly after you had spoken to the council, maybe just minutes after you spoke to the Lowell City Council, a story ran in the Lowell Sun. It was front page of the Lowell Sun the following morning.
I don't see the Lowell Sun.
But the headline, it appeared online early. The headline reads, State Election Directors, with an S at the end, fear the Postal Service can't handle expected crush of mail-in ballots. It's an Associated Press story. First headline, it's out of Minneapolis. Not Greg Pappas' office, not Lowell, not even Massachusetts. State election directors from across the country voiced serious concerns to a top U.S. Postal Service official Tuesday that the system won't be able to handle an expected crush of mail-in ballots in the November election. Echoing what you were said. You were not quoted in this article, right? This is
I did. Okay. That's actually somebody said to me, "Did you know this was coming on?" I had no idea, but I know it was people all over the country who were getting. When I read it, I said, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what it's talking about." And they're just talking about the president. They're not talking about ones they've already had that problem with. Every year it goes up higher and higher the amount of mail-in to the point where it isn't. Let's give us the poll workers to come work in the office instead, but that wouldn't even help. But
state election directors stress that they're still worried that too many ballots won't be delivered in time to be counted in November. They base their fears on past problems, which you said, this isn't something new,
there you go.
And a disruptive consolidation of postal facilities across the country that Postmaster General Louis DeJoy has put on hold until after the elections. By the way, they were talking about this in 2020 when during COVID with the mail-in bags, the post office being able to do it or not.
The post office the right amount of people to handle this. It's not their fault.
And one of your colleagues in Tewksbury, the town clerk, was cited in a later article that talks about mail-in ballots bombshell, saying that, let me find Miss Grafeo, Denise Grafeo.
Denise, yeah.
We have a lot of late ballots with our local elections.
Right.
Local elections, said Denise Grafeo. There were a significant amount of ballots, significant amount. That's important.
I bet it's
that
all
were
four.
delivered after the election, and they were mailed at least a week before. She advised if you're going to put your ballot in the mail, it's not a given that it's going to get to us in time.
Right.
Which brings me to the bombshell that Melanie Gilbert properly titled in the headline.
Yeah.
And you said it on July 23rd. You said 400 ballots, mail-in ballots, did not get counted in the Lowell Municipal Election.
350, 360, something like
Okay.
that. I had them in the office in a box because I can't, you have to keep them for 90 days. And then after 90 days, statutorily, you get rid of city elections. So, yeah.
Okay. So I want to just make sure my math is correct because I don't want to over-exaggerate.
Yeah, right.
I did it
Right.
based on our turnout in 2023 in Lowell was 7,516 voters.
For the city election.
For the city election.
Right.
7,516. I was doing some math with a number at 400, but let's call it 350.
Yeah.
Divided by 7,516, 4.65.
Yeah, there you go.
So nearly, you're saying that nearly 5% of the people who voted or thought they voted in Lowell's municipal election in 2023, their ballot never got counted.
One ballot should not be in that situation. Never mind that many. Not one should be in that situation.
Well, people are going to mail them late. We have to understand that.
You have very few with when you had absentee ballots. They came in plenty of time because Lowell would only have like 700 or 800, not 14,000. Draco would have 300 or 400, not 5,000, 6,000. They need it. We don't. We can go to the polls.
So when I do the math on my calculator, I did it based on the number you used that night, where you said it was about 400 total. Some that are in the official tally, because they came in and were late, but were counted in the number, and then some that came in. You talk about coming in months, if not year.
Yeah, I got.
We're months after.
I told Melanie. I says, here's a souvenir for you. If you want to come in, I can't give it to her, but I says this came in last November. I said, look at it. It's a ballot from Donald Trump and Joe Biden from Lowell. A person's vote came in almost 4 years later. The person's name is on it. I don't want to say anything, but it's in there. So and I can destroy it now because it's after the time period. But the point I'm making is I left it for Will to see it.
The point
4 years later.
The point that should be troubling to people, and I have not, everyone's so busy focused on that one district and that one special election, that nobody, the bombshell, which Melanie correctly pointed out, is that if the number is 350, that's 4.65%. If the number is 400, it's 5.3%.
Right. And it could
so
be
let's call it 5%. 5% of the ballots in a municipal election did not count. People who thought they voted did not vote.
How do you think is going to come in a state election, a state primary? I mean, it's crazy. Can I go to one other thing?
Yeah, of course.
You know the blue boxes outside that we put out, the drop-off boxes?
Yeah, that you put outside of City Hall and had to move to the police station?
I had to move one to the police station. The other one was damaged beyond repair because they tried to break into it. And if that's broken into, like a friend of mine in, I think it was Fitchburg, they took a rag, filled it with gasoline, put it inside, lit it up. 400 ballots that were not taken out that day burnt, and they don't know whose they were. So there's 300 people that were disenfranchised. But we put the other one in the police station, and the lock, we could not get it fixed right. Lowell Lock came to fix it up. $3,000 ballot box.
So they're a sponsor of Inside Lowell, Lowell Lock and Key.
Yeah,
they're the person to call.
They were great, yeah. There's a box that's supposed to be outside, protected, got a camera on it, everything. People wear hoods, whatever they want. Right? It's supposed to be solid like a safe, bolted to the ground, right? He says, watch this, Greg, right? And his wife was with him because she's a partner with him. And she says, time this. He goes, with just a little thing you can get from $7 drill from Wally World, Walmart. Zing, 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 zing. Top off. There's all the ballots for the day. I told Will, I put it in there if they don't like it. These ballots are not safe. The public's not protected. These outdoor boxes, forget it. Then what happens is we had one councilor who wanted to put them at all the fire stations. I said, okay, fine. Are you going to get me the police officer at night, all 12 of them? Just going to stand there at time at 8 o'clock on election night, open up the thing and take out the ballots because it has to be done at that point. It has to be everybody at the same spot at the same time because anything that goes in the middle later doesn't get counted. That's what you do. If you want to do that, we can do it. But now I'm going to have, how many police officers tied up at the polls and how many at the ballot boxes at the fire stations? 12 of them. That's what's going to happen. So the more you want to make this sound better and better, the worse it is. because anything that technically, if they forget to get the ballots that night, I'm not going to know the next day what time they're going to get counted, whether they should have got counted or not. It's all nice, wonderful stuff, but deal with the practicality of it.
I'm still stuck on the 5% of the people
Terrible.
didn't vote.
I don't. That's 1%.
Where are the folks who talk about voter disenfranchisement? How come they don't care when the slow mail process affects?
We're the ones who want it, but they want to shut off the preliminary. That's the most important thing. The preliminary, if you don't have the preliminary in this type of district elections, you're going to have basically a vote for 9 out of 18 in the final. You know that. Belvedere's would have 7 or 8 or 10 candidates running, and you get some smart people that know if they can get 200 votes, they win. Is that what you want your council to get elected with, 250 votes or whatever?
Yeah, that only happens in the acre.
But I'm talking overall when you have that many people running, because everybody and their brother will. And the scenario is, like I said, all for the special. But I just told them, if you do it, I can't guarantee it's going to come out right. So that's all I said.
Right. So I don't want to go there because Lord knows there was a local jihad over this, like a holy war over this.
Can I tell you something? But I got a lot of contact from people saying, thank you for telling the truth. Probably more than you got a local jihad the other way. And they were from Belvedere. You're absolutely right. This stuff is out of it. We need to go back to mail and go back to voting in person.
Well, good luck convincing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I want to tell you honestly, I had over. My wife was looking at my missus, over 185 people that lived in that area. I had some from other parts of the city too.
I am concerned, however, that in the future, because somebody will step down again, somebody will pass away, unfortunately, and you will have to have a special election in Lowell.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that 120-day timeline. Should now that we're not in a crunch, because there's no rumors of John Leahy's already come and gone, and the next person, who knows who that is and when it happens, but should the city council go back and revisit this? Can they do something later? Have a longer deadline than 120 days? Could they, or the state election laws that say you have to have?
Well, it's special legislation. Is it permanent for this, or is it just for this particular thing? I don't know.
And how would this? I think it's permanent at this point.
Well, if it's permanent, then what they need to do next?
But if it's flawed, it should be fixed now.
Well, if it's not going to have a preliminary, then what they need to do is sit down and give the time periods there. Now they're going to have to tell you, okay, we're going to have to readjust the calendar, because everything in the calendar is by ordinance and statute. Right. So if it says they get 5 weeks to get signatures, you got to cut it back to 2 weeks to make this work. Then you better find out how do you cut it back to 2 weeks. Is it but they got to do that first. And like I said, I'll be honest, Councilor Robinson was very proactive when he was, I thought things were going to get done, and then it goes by fast, and you're not the chairman anymore. They rotate Corey was right there moving stuff along, but I don't think he had too much support in other spots. And I get it. It took me a while.
There's a part of me that thinks more people than not were okay with appointments, especially until they realized it was John Leahy's seat, and then suddenly everyone cared about the will of the people.
But I think what happened is it took a while. Not the manager, and not the city solicitor. Well, when Corey came in, not him. Corey Williams definitely realized. I tried to make them understand something, that the elections department in Lowell is the most important office in the building. And the young lady that they hired for Homeland Security, Miss Tetchy, worked with me at MEMA when I was Galvin's appointment. She worked there. She's a gem. They got a real good person. But the reality is, she knows if we go to a continuity of government emergency, the only ones at City Hall are going to be the elections department and her. And the police are going to get deputized for something if it's a bad thing. Elections department is the most important department in that building. End of story. No elections, no city council. No city council, no manager. No nothing. Elections come under continuity of government. And they are now an act of a war. Trump made that. He added them to continuity of government in 2017. Impacting elections is the same thing as a state act of war. You bomb bridges in the United States and you bomb transportation and the infrastructure. Well, elections are now considered the infrastructure. So now Tom always realized that. The manager always realized that. The other people need to realize it too and wake up, because we've been so slack in my hometown here. Even though I live in Drake, I grew up in Lowell. For the last 10 or 15 years, there were things going on prior to mail-in voting when it was really easy to run an election. And now it's got, now you got a real professional in there too with Will Rosenberry from Lowell. He's going to have to do this. He's going to follow the laws, and he's going to say, I'm sorry, this is the law, just like I had to say.
Another Greek kid, by the way, replacing him.
Well, technically, yeah. He is in a way through a god, like a god uncle type of thing. Yeah.
Which in Greek is family.
Yeah,
anyone who knows Greeks knows that that's family.
But he's just really good at this. I'm glad he applied for it. I'm glad he took it. I knew him 20 years ago when he came in He was very promising, and he worked his way up literally from the mailroom to right up to the next to the director of elections. And it's gotten so complicated down there. I know the secretary doesn't want to say anything, but I know he really wants to move. He'll never say it. I know he really wants.
No, he can't. It's Massachusetts. You know really, that's not happening.
But he would really want to move the primary into August. He really would want to do that. And especially now with this primary, you're coming off a Labor Day weekend. So you got to gear up the 600-man army that you need on election day between all the poll workers and DPW and the police and everything. You got to gear them all up the weekend when they're away to get the stuff to the polling locations, get it set up on Friday so it's ready for Tuesday morning. It's an army that you put out there to get all the buckets made, to get all it takes a day and a half just to set up the buckets with the equipment to go to the polling locations. People don't know that. Imagine having to do that 4 times with a special election too. I mean, but I'm saying, do it. We need to do stuff like that. There's no doubt about it. But we can't guarantee under this situation, with the biggest election coming up in the history, with the biggest mail-in possibility, that we could have pulled off the city. And don't get mad if it would have failed, because I couldn't even guarantee that it wouldn't. There's too much possibility of confusion, and the kids work 5 weeks straight at the end. I worked 3 weeks. That's what wore me out from my tumor on my liver there. I needed the rest. 5 weeks straight. They're exhausted. To tell them they have to go do another city election 3 weeks later. Well, they crash.
Why can't you get them help? That was one of the questions that was asked.
Yeah.
Why can't you bring in outside people to help from the Secretary of State's office?
Yeah, because Secretary of State's not going to loan you. We can't do that. It was there. They got every city in the town wants them. The 5 machines in our office, the VRIS machines, we are licensed to them. We have to use our fingerprint to get into them. No one can touch those. Galvin has it, and rightfully so, licensed to the 5 people the director picks, the 4 people and himself. Even when MIS for the city comes in the office, I told you, they working on the city computer. We have 2 computers on our desk. They'll ask us can you move the state one? They won't even touch it because they know physically they're not even supposed to touch it. When we have anything down with that, we call Boston. They send somebody up. MIS will just stand there and go, that's a switch. That's the one to connect to the wall. They can't touch the machine. Legally, nobody but those 5 people can. I don't care if I brought 40 people in. I can't. That's it.
Yeah, I find that voting integrity and disenfranchisement
that's what it is.
Matters depending on what the individual is.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing
These are laws.
Now, if you can get other people licensed so they can work through the night, so you could do the processing constantly, which is what you're going to end up doing at some point. But then again, this is, like I said, why Philadelphia, why Minneapolis, why all these cities. Chicago, they might have, Boston has 200,000 ballots sitting in there, and they got, 17 people. It can... To scan to do the 7 steps, you don't have enough machine time and sleep time to do it in a 5-week period sometimes. And then you got to add a city on top of it. Like I said, all for a city election. Would have done it, but if I was still here, I would have told them right up front, can't guarantee that it's not going to mess up one or the other. Could affect the state election.
But if you vote on election day,
you can't make a mistake.
You put them through the machine.
That's it.
And it's tabulated automatically.
The only time it takes 2 steps is if somebody is inactive, which they're inactive because they didn't fill out the census or they didn't vote in 2 state elections, and there's a reason for that. Protects the people in Lowell and that person from somebody going and using their name to vote, because they have to show an ID or some form of identification that they live at that address. There's a reason the state laws do that, so that people don't come back from other cities and towns and try to vote. That's a safety. So that's the only time we'll take a second step. They go, well, you're listed and acted. You have a form of a bill, a cable bill, whatever. Okay, that's you. You still live there. You sign a thing saying, yes, I do, on the pains and penalty of perjury. And then they give them the ballot. So sometimes it takes 2 steps. 1 out of maybe 10% of the people who go to vote at the polls. 2 steps. Us, all 100% of the ballots, 70% of the ballots, 7 steps minimum. And then you have to do the same thing with the city council races. And did we already scan these? Did we scan the city? Wait a minute, did we put them in? Did we not put them in? No, we did the state yesterday. Well, we still got more state. We got to do that first as a priority, because it's it's crazy. It's a nut house.
All right.
Being honest, any clerk will tell you this. Like you said, the AP wire stories, that's what they're telling you.
Confirming everything
all
you
over
said
the country,
that night.
But all for a special election, just couldn't guarantee that it would come out right. So,
all right.
Greg
Pappas,
all right.
former elections director for the city of Lowell. As always, thank you. I've got you, on speed dial, so you can say anything you want.
I
You
am
don't have to
retired.
worry about it.
I never did before. I never
No,
did.
you never were.
I never was that way. I mean, that's how I ended up working for a congressman, for a state treasurer. When I left different places, other people call me up right away and say, what are you doing? You're looking for, yeah, sure, I'll come. And that's how you get a reputation of being honest. And I did. Yeah. And that's how I was brought up. We're from Lowell. That's what we are.
Honesty is scary.
But it's what it is.
Thank you to Greg Pappas.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us as well for this Inside Lowell podcast. I hope you learned something, and I hope you take that figure, that 5%, somewhere thereabouts 5% of Lowell's cast ballots in the municipal election in 2023 never got counted. Voter disenfranchisement. But I'm the one who makes up conspiracy theories. Thank you. Till next time, everybody stay safe.